Oh, there you go. Go ahead.
We can't hear you.
So I was talking to myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi,
We couldn't
class.
hear you.
Today's article is on intergenerational transmission of violence. I'll be going first, then next will be Jody, and then Natalie will be bringing it home. This article was by Kathy Spatz Wyndham and Helen W. Wilson. So in the intro, they give us some data. In fiscal year 2010, nearly 3 million children were referred to Child Protective Services agencies for suspect maltreatment in the US. Out of that number, 700,000 children were determined by state and local child protective service and agencies to be victims of maltreatment. And out of that number, 1,700 children died as a result of child abuse or of neglect. One of the most common assumption in the scholarly and popular literature refers to as a cycle of violence or the intergenerational transmission of violence. In the social learning theory, this model suggests that children acquire behavior through modeling and reinforcement contingencies in the context of social interaction. A suggestion by White and Stouts were the doctors who did this research. Physical punishment lays the groundwork for the normative legitimacy of all types of violence. Next, the next theory was the attachment theory. Attachment theory refers to the early bond that the attachment theory refers to the early bond that an infant develops with a caretaker and is based on a internal working model. According to attachment theory, abuse and inconsistency or rejection from a primary caretaker disrupts attachment and leads children to develop a hostile view of the world and other people. When it comes to the social information processing, it suggests that several physical harm during early childhood before the age of 5 leads to chronic aggression by bringing about the development of biased and social information processing patterns. The next section was neuropsychological model. It's the effect of stress.
I'm sorry, Ava, who is doing the slideshow? Because you're still on page 1. I think you guys need to control this. Somebody has to go to the next slide.
Sorry. So I picked this picture for my section. I didn't want to put words on the, too many words on the slide. So I just found a photo that summarized what this article was questioning. Was questioning on. I left off on. Oh, I left off on. Sorry. The next section was behavioral genetics. The theory describes above that the cycle of violence is due to the direct effect of being exposed to a violent childhood environment. The first and simplest theory suggests that intergenerational cycle of violence is explained, at least in the part, by transfer of inherited traits from parents to offspring. Violent parents are their child and also to transmit increased genetic risk of violent behavior. Violent behavior. A second perspective suggests that aggression genotypes in children and could bring about abuse from parents. However, a twin study either with children or parents, have not supported these hypotheses and instead confirm a direct relation between a warring environment and with the antisocial behavior. So now we're going to get into more theories that Jody will be taking the lead on.
Okay. So for the prospective studies linking childhood abuse and neglected violence adulthood, they've been having a sequence of studies. For the social learning theory, they did 5 studies that the result reflected to what the theory it was explaining. Victim of physical abuse will become physically violent as an adult. Most of the research, the studies that they did, they will see an increase of 59% as a juvenile. As an adult, they will see a 28.0%, and for violent crimes, it will be a 30.0%. I made a picture right here. G1 representing the adult, G2 representing the child. So basically the adult would abuse the child through a sequence of time. And then when the G2, the child, becomes the adult, there's a higher rate that the G2, the child that became the adult, will have a kid, and the same cycle would just go in circles over and over again. So the abuser abuses the kid, then the kid becomes the abuser and has a kid, and then it just goes on and on and on. There's also, let me see. For the social learning theory, there is also they vary, the results vary, so it's not like exact like the social learning theory. They vary because it depends on the exposure and the type of abuse the child is exposed to. It depends on how, if they do become violent as an adult or they just become a regular person. There's different type of exposures. Some of them might be a witness of marital abuse that lowers the rates of a child being an aggressor. But if it's more like a physical abuse, the chances increase more into the child becoming the aggressor. The reading also mentions how genetic susceptibility, I can't mention that word. Genetic susceptibility can also cause responses of maltreated children. Varies, most maltreated children will become violent offender as an adult, but others won't. They mentioned that the polymorphism goes into the MAOA. I can't pronounce the word, sorry. And also can result to antisocial behavior. So they did, how Awa was mentioning, the research on the twin boys. Some of the parents didn't agree that the genetic that each child evolved might be caused to the antisocial behavior and prediction. They also did the study on Caspian collaborators and Foley and collaborators. And now, Natalie, you could take on.
Okay. So my portion is there possible ways to break the cycle of violence? Yes, there is. And it all starts, honestly, from the social services and the juvenile justice systems and other agencies, when they're contacted for something that happens with children, their job is to really raise awareness to the parents of different therapies that can happen, that should be implemented. Taking a child out of the home, let me just state that, putting them into social services or putting them into, any type of like foster home stuff that can really, really hurt the child instead of helping them. So that's when I'm getting into the possible ways of the cycle, how we can break that instead of, going automatically to fostering this child, taking him out of the home, it's not helping the child, it's actually going to hurt them more. So some of the therapies, excuse me, some of the therapies that are offered are one is multi-system therapy. There's trauma-focused cognitive therapy, TFCBT. There's cognitive behavior intervention for trauma in school. And then the last one that I feel like is really beneficial is the nurse family partnership program, programs. Next slide. You can switch to the next slide. All right. The multi-system therapy, just to not bombard you with information, is basically an intensive in-home treatment with a team of physicians and nurses and practitioners, all that. They meet with the family multiple times a week. It's a well-established evidence-based treatment. It's available 24 hours a day. So any situations that happen, they can contact those people. The therapy lasts about 3 to 5 months, and typically it targets youth ages 12 to 17, because we know at that age, that's when all the kind of, I guess, negative, it could happen earlier, but a lot of negative behavior starts to really show because, hormones and all that. On the side, I have a model there that starts with the child in the middle, and this is how they start their therapy, or they believe the therapy should be. So it's the child, and it goes to the family and educating them, and it goes to their peers and family, neighborhood, and community culture. And some of their goals is to provide the caregiver discipline, to know how to discipline your children, because a lot of the caregivers don't know how to discipline their children. If they've been abused, if they know their child has been abused in some way, they don't really know. It enhances family relations. It decreases the chance of them being around peers that aren't so good for them. It improves school performances. They tend to engage in positive activities. They develop a network of extended family, friends, and also community. Some of the findings for this has been great. It's been found that there have been reductions in problematic behavior, fewer home placements, families decreased in neglectful parenting. There's a decrease in minor and severe child abuse. There's a decrease in psychological aggression. So statistics for you providing for this therapy is 54% have fewer arrests over 14 years. 75% over the last 22 years. It's 75% less violent crimes or arrested for violent crimes. And there's 54% fewer out of home placements. So that's a really good, really good statistics for that. Next slide. All right, so for this one, this is the other therapy that they're offering, which is trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy. And basically it's treatment for children who have experienced trauma, physical abuse, or been exposed to domestic abuse. That's also abuse as well. It involves both parent and child. And I think that's what I like about these therapies, that it's not only focusing on the child and what they experience, but also educating the parent. So that's really based on all these programs too as well. So it's based on a behavior model of gradual exposure to traumatic material. Parents are educated on the effects of trauma or children, information on how to support their children, how to communicate about the experiencing, parenting and behavior management skills. Also receiving education on the justice system and where to apply for victim assistance. I think that's another issue that a lot of the parents have, and why everything ends up going to court, or the kid, like in the story, like in the article, we hear about Teddy and how the system didn't do him justice. Teddy was the abused 8-year-old, and her was being abused by his father. She reported it and nothing was done. He continued to hurt him. Also for that, there was there's other places that also do this trauma, or this therapy, I should say, but there's no findings for it. So they kind of moved on from this into schools. So this is where the other program, next slide. This is where the school program was developed after that. They felt like it was more important to put it in schools. So this is the Cognitive Behavior Intervention for Trauma in Schools. So it's a school-based program. It's a group and individual intervention. It's used for grades from 5th to 12. Again, those are the ages that most people need, or like kids really need some type of intervention in their lives. It's for students who have witnessed traumatic events, such as community violence, school violence, physical, domestic abuse, natural disasters, accidents, and etc. Some of the techniques they use are cognitive behavior techniques, social education, social problem solving, cognitive reconstruction, exposure, education on healthy relationships, healthy communication skills, and social action activities. Some of the findings that you'll see are reduced incidence of physical and emotional abuse, reduced emotional stress over time, and decrease in self-reported PTSD and depression, because a lot of these kids end up experiencing all that, later on in life, or anxiety and all that stuff. So it's been proven that this intervention really does help decrease in all those type of situations. Next slide. All right, so the last one that is introduced here is the Nurse Family Partnership Program. Basically what that is an intervention for reducing risk of child abuse among low-income families and first-time pregnancies. So basically this one's a little different. This is before the mother has her child. If she's goes to the hospital for some reason, something happens to her, or it's better to intervene before she has a child. So maybe stop it at an early age. I think this is the best one that I've read. And again, it's intervention for reducing risk of child abuse among low-income families, first-time pregnancies. They provide regular home visits from nurses. Nurses help with prenatal care, reduction of substance abuse, substance abuse, acknowledgement of child development, knowledge of basically also money as well. Some of the findings of this was a 48% reduction in state verified rates of child abuse and neglect, 50% relative reduction in emergency encounters. Basically, it's been down that once they have provided this, have the care that they need, it's less you see cases of neglect in the hospitals or even child abuse, which is very sad. Also, they've seen that women have take a lot more time having their babies, as opposed to just having a baby and then having another one right after that, because that happens a lot. Also, they've noticed that the mothers on it have required fewer assistance financially. They get off welfare, they find a job, they actually end up completing their GEDs. All that good stuff, and it provides really, really good. It also helps them with fewer arrests, behavior impairments. The only thing though that all these therapies are great, but the biggest, I guess, takeaway from this is sort of awareness. Because honestly, I didn't know any of these programs until I read this article, truthfully, and I feel like that has to do with awareness. Especially women or also fathers or like men and all that, they don't know about these programs. So how can you offer these programs, and how can it get better, the cycle of violence? How can we help that? And that's what we need, is awareness. And I feel like there's not enough awareness, and that seems to be the problem with these therapies. Now, that goes back to, again, these social services and the juvenile justice systems. They should be the ones to really, instead of, just doing their job, stamping the case file and just sending them off to foster care, they should really, really implement these programs and intervene before they take a child out of the home. That brings it all together. And yeah, I mean, that's basically it for my presentation.
Yay, applause.
Yay.
So the presentation is done?
We wanted to talk about also, the one thing I just wanted to mention was like, how can we relate it to the book readings? We definitely seen Terrell and Allison. We were reading about that because these readings kind of connect with what we're talking about. Terrell also experienced, you know, a lot of that, like his mother, you know, being a drug addict and not knowing what to do and being part of a gang and thinking that's family and neglecting her child. And, you know, it's sort of where the same thing as Teddy in the story, where his mother didn't know what to do. Well, she tried to do something, but again, she wasn't educated or anything. She didn't know where to go for the course. People just, just wrote her off, wrote her off, and no one did anything about it. So, and then she didn't know how to discipline her child. She didn't know how to do anything. And it's just like, you know, the same thing with Terrell. I mean, she didn't know how to be a mom. She didn't know, you know, how to do all that. And that's basically it.
Yeah, I mean, you see, our topic is child abuse and violence, obviously, today, and we're all asking us why? Why? How can you harm such a cute little, you know, being?
Mm-hmm.
Parents want to be good parents, such as Brandon's or Eugenia's mother, and all the stories we have read heartbrokenly. Some of us cried and screamed, even Brendan, who was neglected and with 23 different nannies. But sometimes parents just lose control or don't have the resources to be a parent, to be a mindful parent. They don't know how to cope with the bigger stressors. I mean, having a child is challenging. I don't want to see it. I don't want to use the term stress, but it is very challenging. It's not easy. And I know several of you are parents, right? Raise your hands. Thumb up. I know we have at least like 5 or 6 parents here, right? Including the little toddler. So sometimes we are burned out, and we know from reading Born for Love, we can't do it alone.
Exactly.
Nobody is born to take care of a child in solitude. Single parenting is tough, but if there's a social support system, it works out. Look at Obama. His mother was single, but he had grandparents who chipped in. He had neighbors who helped out. He became, you know, a success story because of the community that helped out. So it was really a village who raised him at the end of the day.
Exactly.
So we shouldn't underestimate that. And with urbanization, you know, families are just becoming very nuclear. We don't have our kins, our big clan. You know, we don't have our kibbutz. Maybe you guys are familiar with kibbutz. They're like Jewish communities. You live like 20, 30 families together, and the kids do things together. Some person takes care of the kids, another cooks for the whole community. We don't have those communities, just traditional communities living in a little village, unfortunately, anymore. Everything is getting urbanized, but I think the pandemic is shaking us up. And I'm reading reports that New Yorkers are now escaping to the woods, into the woods, you know, like getting out of the urban, you know, jungle. And because they don't, I mean, it's not only overcrowded, but there's no, you don't want to be for the next 30 days. That's now clear that our president really gave us a number. For the next 30 days, we are in quarantine. So nobody wants to be isolated by themselves. And now imagine raising a kid all by yourself.
It's very difficult.
Which is this. So it is very easy if you losing your job. The only, you know, pleasure you have right now is the bottle alcohol or some other illicit drug. So you are unable to cope, and you neglect your parenting responsibilities. I mean, I just now was an example of that, right? I was trying to teach with, you know, something, and then he went at the back. I neglected him, and God forbid, the whole cabinet could have come on top of him. I don't even want to think about it, but let's keep it. Whatever happened in Psych 350, there's a reason why I put that in the syllabus. So let's keep it here. I'm not a bad mom. That doesn't mean, you know, report me. I'm not a bad mom. I tried my best, but however, that millisecond where I didn't pay attention to him, God forbid, he could have hurt himself. But thank God the cabinet didn't land on him. This is just a prime example that sometimes parents just fail. And it's very, at the same time, it's very difficult to imagine that you could harm a child. It's physical abuse or even sexual abuse. Did you guys watch, I just recently watched it, not because I'm into it, but because I was going to teach this class with you guys. It's called Patrick Melrose. It's based on a semi-autobiographical story. I write the name and you guys can, Patrick Melrose. He comes from a very privileged family. His father is a sadist. He sexually abuses him at the age of 8, and he continues doing that, but his mother is a hopeless alcoholic. And this is based on a true story. This is the author's story, and he has made it into 5 different books, and now it's really, the first season is out, so you guys can watch it. It's with the guy who played Doctor Strange or Doctor Who. Doctor Strange. Oh, yeah. Patrick, you probably have seen it. It's like circulating on Netflix now or Amazon, and he becomes a junkie, and then eventually he also marries, has kids, and goes to the summer place where he was actually abused, and PTSD, things get triggered, and he falls again into the same cycle. You know, he doesn't become abusive, but he gets so involved into himself that he forgets his role as a husband and father, and just starts drinking and cheating and taking drugs, and oh my God. And it's like, it's so hard to watch it, but at the same time it's like, yeah, this is really happening. You're losing it. Anyway, so, well, I don't want to talk too much, but I gave you my lecture on many things. But do you guys have any questions? I mean,
Can you repeat the name of it? You said Patrick what?
I put it into the chat. Patrick Melrose. Please watch it. And when you're watching it, you'll see junkies with a different eye. And the 80s are depicted in New York. So he's between New York and England and France. Like his childhood is, and then his adulthood is growing up, and then fast forward, you see like the 2003 or something, like current times. So you see really his development from being a young sexually abused child, and then his mother who's emotionally destroying him. She's not even there when this is happening. And at some point she's just abandoning the whole family. And poor little Patrick. He has nothing but, cocaine at the end. So, but team who presented today, do you have 2 big questions for us? And I would like to put you into breakout rooms so we can break out.
Sure. I have one big question right now, and then my teammates probably have another one. Do I say it now, or do you want to split it?
No, say it now so I can split you.
Okay.
Stop recording, okay?
So you guys read about